Welcome to Module 6, Compiling the Strengths, Needs, and Culture Discovery and Preparing for the First Team Meeting. This sixth in a series of online learning modules provides an introduction to care coordination using the Wraparound practice model in alignment with the National Wraparound Initiative. These modules focus on providing an introduction to the practice model, wraparound facilitation skills and competencies to implement the model, and links to further resources for the learner about wraparound practices. The Butler County Family and Children First Council partnered with the Center for School-Based Mental Health Programs at Miami University to produce the learning modules. Please push the forward arrow on the bottom right to advance to the next slide. Participants will learn techniques to transition strength statements from descriptive to functional. Identify techniques for engaging prospective team members. Review tools and processes for creating and disseminating a strengths, needs, and culture discovery. Assess options for preparing for first team meeting. The task of the facilitator following meeting with the family is to summarize the information in a narrative form and strengths inventory, known as the Strength, Needs, and Culture Discovery, or SNCD. When we're talking about strengths, we're talking about the assets, skills, capacities, talents, strong preferences, and ways that things work best for the person. The facilitator begins organizing the story that was told to them, with the facts that were noted from meeting with the family and from input of team members who know the family. The facilitator needs to analyze the story and conversations had to pick out the strengths from what they heard. It is the job of the facilitator to assemble these at this point, not for the family to be responsible for pointing them out. Additionally, though, it is not for the facilitator to be the strengths guru, and therefore acknowledges when family and team members recognize or add strengths. The importance of discovering strengths are: 1. Identifying the attitudes or beliefs of an individual or family helps others in setting the right tone and respectful style of interaction with the family. 2. Highlighting the skills and abilities of the youth, family, and partners helps provide the building blocks that can be used to bring about the family's hoped-for change. 3. Recounting significant history or attributes of the family helps the team in seeing more natural connections that can be utilized. 4. Capturing the individual's preferences generally builds their participation in developing and implementing a plan and gives validity to the steps to be taken as they are in the preferred way the person likes. In identifying strengths, we can categorize them generally into 3 types: descriptive, contextual, and functional. In Wraparound, we believe that all people have strengths regardless of their current situation, background, or history. Each person's strengths are unique, and change is more likely to happen if we build on these strengths. In terms of those things that work best for people, they know their own strengths and preferences. Descriptive strengths are those strengths which tell us something about the person and describes them that engages us in learning more about them. It is helpful to have descriptive strengths because it helps us to begin to learn the new story of the family we're going to be planning around. Contextual strengths are ones which, from a particular situation or context, help us to learn more about the resources the family uses to handle particular situations. Functional strengths are the skills, abilities, or preferred ways of doing things which can be applied in various situations and helps us to make sense of how the person or family is operating. One way of organizing the information is to create a family timeline. Looking at the example, there are 3 lines, the first beginning with the emancipation of the caregiver, then moving forward through their life, meeting their partners and having children, and the life of the youth in particular, who is the focus of the planning. The facilitator notes significant events that have occurred, positive as well as those which are more challenging. Sometimes it can also be effective to draw one line and put the positive items above the line and the more negative ones below to see how they interrelate. Once the facilitator has done this, they may see patterns of where an event or person in their lives impacted them and how they responded. The facilitator thinks through the information provided and sees what strengths were utilized in order for the person to respond this way. Functional strengths are most helpful to the team in planning as they build on what works for the individual and can help to bring about the change the family is seeking. Some questions you may ask, putting yourself in their situation, are as follows. What did the person or family do? How have they dealt with this challenge before? What skills were utilized in order to do this? How has it worked when they've had this challenge? Who did they turn to? What was happening around them at the time? Think back. Why did the person or family do the things they did in the past? What did they get out of it? How could they use this again in the future? There are often times when engaging a family that they recount a lot of the problems they are dealing with, and it is more challenging to see strengths. Therefore, the facilitator may have to reframe these problem statements that demonstrate the buried or hidden strength in a way someone behaves or thinks. For example, the mom recounts that the youth does not listen or do what is told. Without conveying that the facilitator is unsympathetic to what she is dealing with or making excuses for the youth's behavior, the facilitator may see a strength that the youth makes his own decisions, or acts independently, or is of his own mind. In reframing that in a meaningful way, the family and team may be able to shape behaviors of the youth, being mindful of that strength from the onset. These strengths then can be helpful in more creative development of resources or responses to needs. It also helps to create a strengths-based culture and environment of delivering services and help to the family. It is important to engage other team members in the development of these family and team strengths. As we have discussed, the value added in doing wraparound is having many perspectives at the table. Different team members see family members from different perspectives and are a great resource when creating the initial and ongoing strengths inventory. They often see things in the family that the family does not readily see in themselves. Checking in with all team members and supports is important in creating a comprehensive strengths inventory. Not only can family strengths be derived from conversations with team members, they each bring their own unique qualities and resources to the table. In addition to the youth and family strengths, identifying team member strengths is a vital part of preparing the strengths inventory. These include their skills and abilities that are resources for the team to use. Natural supports bring valuable perspectives and often ways of dealing with the youth that are different from immediate family members. They sometimes can offer help when formal supports are unavailable. Team members who are professional or formal supports bring their expertise to the table, and it is affirming and engaging to note these strengths when building a team. In addition to their expertise, formal supports also have lived experience or interest, which, if shared, often provides the family or youth a fuller view of the professional and opportunities to find commonalities with which to engage the youth. Besides knowing that the therapist is skillful at teaching skills of dealing with past trauma and using this in addressing needs, it may be helpful knowing they like playing the guitar or are a football fan, which may help the youth or family in connecting to them or help in addressing a need from another way. At the end of the day, regardless of our title, we are all human, bringing unique talents, interests, and personalities and perspectives to the table. After developing these strengths, the facilitator makes them into a list or strengths inventory. The facilitator will use the strengths list, along with other tools discussed later, as a visual tool in the initial meeting and throughout the wraparound process to help the team connect the use of strengths in their planning. As the team continues to work, meet, and learn about the youth and family, the list will be added to so additional strengths can be utilized in helping the family address their needs. Developing a comprehensive list of strengths is important in preparing for initial planning and ongoing planning. What's more, it is important to make sure all team members, including family members, understand the connection between utilizing strengths and coming up with an individualized plan for the youth and family. Take time during the engagement phase and initial meeting prep to ensure family and team members understand strengths and how we interpret strengths in wraparound. Along with identifying strengths, the facilitator's task is to develop a list of statements which are possible needs the team will plan around. From the conversations with the family and potential team members, the facilitator thinks about what are the underlying driving factors or reasons the youth or family have that are preventing them from moving forward as they would like in their lives. When we speak about needs, it is different than the presenting problems they have, which often is how service providers describe those they are starting to serve. Needs and wraparound address the underlying question of why a particular situation, behavior, or concern is happening, as opposed to what specifically is happening. Problem statements label the situation, such as the Jerry is oppositional or Miss Smith is depressed, but it does not give meaningful direction as how to help them. A good need statement will help us understand what drove the person to act that way and what authentic help may look like. A need for Jerry may be, Jerry needs to feel he has some choice over his life. If we were to target help to him feeling some control, his oppositional behaviors may go down. Likewise, Miss Smith may need to be reassured that Jerry can change for the better. The help would target her feeling less stress and gaining confidence while also addressing Jerry's needs. If you would like more information on writing need statements, click on the word needs to view Pat Miles' needs guides for a fuller explanation of the difference between problems and needs and how to develop need statements. Then push the forward arrow to continue. Let's take a look at some need statements versus goal statements. Can you select the ones that read more as need statement rather than goals? Are they easy to tell apart? Why or why not? Check your understanding of goals versus needs. Pick the statement on the left and then drag it over into the correct box on the right. Push submit when you think you have all the correct answers. Brianna needs to feel teachers hear her when she expresses feelings of frustration. Monica needs to learn ways to manage stress at school. Jennifer needs to control her impulsive behaviors more at home. Jeffrey needs to trust peers will accept him even when he gets into trouble. Jerry needs to know he can count on adults to keep him safe at home. Brianna needs to learn better ways to express her feelings. Well-crafted need statements are also different than goals. A goal states what we want to see happen, such as Jerry needs to follow direction at school. A need statement communicates the underlying reason for the behavior. It should be something we can imagine them saying they feel or need for themselves. For example, his need may be, Jerry needs to feel listened to by his teachers. The next slide will give you some guidelines for developing good need statements and how to self-check when coming up with need statements of your own. To check if a statement is a good potential need statement, 1. It will help generate multiple options to address the need. If it leads to only one or just a few options, it may be a goal, such as Jerry needs to accept responsibility for his actions. A better need statement possibly may be Jerry needs to feel his parents still love him, even when he misbehaves. This could lead to others helping him to generate lots of ways to show him love and feel supported in changing his behavior if this was holding him back. 2. It will help define the situation rather than describe it. The need statement should help anyone who hears it gain a better understanding of the underlying conditions of why things are the way they are, as opposed to just describing a bad situation. For example, a poor statement is, Miss Smith needs help with her depression. A better one may be, Miss Smith needs to feel confident she can manage her feelings even when she feels overwhelmed at times. 3. It will help activate others to actually do something. A good need statement will inspire others to consider what they can do to make things better. A statement like, Jerry needs to follow house routines and structure, doesn't engage others much in different ways of helping him. A better statement may be, Jerry needs to know he can count on adults to keep him safe at home, which would engage adults in helping to keep him safe. It also helps others understand why they are doing an intervention and to extend themselves more readily and go further in ways of helping. Now take a look at the list of statements. Which of these statements will activate others to take action? Which of these defines the underlying condition leading to the unwanted behavior versus describing what is expected? Now let's check your understanding of goals versus needs again. Pick the statement on the left and then drag it over into the correct box on the right. Push submit when you think you have all the correct answers. Mark needs to trust his past mistakes don't define him or his future. Jerry needs to follow house routines and structures. Jeffrey needs to play more with kids his age. Molly needs to feel she will be okay even when her routine is changed. Lauren needs to feel supported when she makes mistakes rather than blamed. Brianna needs to be more successful in school. In writing the need statements that will be used by the team at their initial meeting, the facilitator is mindful that it conveys that the problematic behavior or situation is amenable to change. It then should promote more responsive interventions from those who hear it, as opposed to just controlling and containing the behavior. By framing them in a way that gets to the underlying drive instead of a more superficial or narrow problem, it will expand the kinds of help generated to include more tailored services, creative interventions, and new ways for the individual to connect with others. This in turn draws more team members in to provide help, so that multiple strategies are at work addressing the need. The facilitator ideally has a substantial list of need statements for the team to consider. Some of the ways to generate need statements are: ask why anyone would behave this way. Put yourself in the shoes of the youth, caregiver, or another team member and think how they would answer the question. Again, thinking of these various opinions, what is the driving force underlying the behavior? Is it control, acceptance, reassurance, or structure? If this is the driving force, what then does the youth need? Parents also have needs. If you know what their hope is for their family and then ask yourself why this is important to them, you can generate statements of what they may need. It is important to spend time crafting the need statements, as they will be used throughout the planning process and will guide the help that is developed and how the content of the planning is organized. As stated in an earlier module, in Ohio, the practice level target description for utilizing effective need statements was designed to point to practical, concrete implementation strategies that can differentiate features of high-fidelity wraparound practice from other team-based practice patterns. In the table, the associated skills for effective need statements within the process and products of wraparound are laid out, as well as indicators of best practices, acceptable and unacceptable variations. As seen in the table, at this stage in the wraparound process, the first skill is needs are defined in a meaningful way. The best practice would mean needs are defined as driving forces behind negative behavior and create meaning out of adverse situations that the youth and our family experiences. It helps to make sense out of the undesirable behavior and gives a better understanding of why it may be happening, even though we may want the behavior to change. Another aspect of formulating the strengths, needs, and culture discovery is articulating the culture of the family. When we speak of culture, we are talking about the unique ways that a family forms itself in terms of rules, roles, habits, activities, and beliefs. In the depiction of the culture iceberg, you note those things we may associate with culture tend to be those visible things, like how they dress, or we often refer to culture as the fine arts or literature. When we talk about family culture and wraparound, we are looking to uncover the family's belief about life, spirituality, traditions, how they define success, for example. We are looking to understand what the unspoken rules are for the family, how they make decisions, what is important to them. Including information about the family culture will help the team create a more individualized plan for the youth and family. If we know a family prefers to stay home during the week and venture out on the weekends, it makes more sense for the plan to include in-home supports, activities, or services during the week, while planning out-of-the-house activities or supports on the weekends. If we know a family is very focused on their spirituality, it makes sense to include those types of supports or ideas in the plan. On the flip side, it wouldn't make sense to include things in the plan that go against their beliefs or values. Understanding a family culture will also likely lead to team members better understanding the family and their perspective, as well as lead to better follow through or buy-in to the action steps created in future planning. In pulling the SNCD narrative together, it is often helpful to introduce the youth to the reader with some descriptive strengths to engage them in the story. Then the narrative can be organized by domains, such as family, school, work, financial, spiritual, legal, health, social, cultural identity, etc., to provide a holistic view of the family. As an alternative, the story can be told more chronologically, covering the different domains as they unfold over time. The narrative should include their first involvement with a youth-serving system, such as health, child welfare, juvenile justice, developmental disabilities, behavioral health, and special education, as this first experience often colors their other experiences of dealing with other systems. The language should be understandable to a wide range of readers and should not sound like a clinical assessment. It should not include labels or diagnoses. It can describe characteristics seen, but should avoid labeling, as it tends to put people in different boxes, and also many times youth have multiple diagnoses, which can be wrong. It is better to describe the characteristics to the reader. The youth can be inattentive and like to fidget. It may be ADHD, but also could be PTSD or another disorder. Therefore, providing a description without labeling is sufficient. It also helps the reader to understand what life may be like for the youth and family. The narrative should capture significant events and how the family responded to them, who they turned to, what worked or didn't work of what they tried, and why it did work. These could be captured as strengths of the family. Look at the initial conditions that brought the family to wraparound planning. In 1 or 2 sentences, state a summary of what you have heard. The narrative should cover things more factually and without the blame or judgmental language families sometimes use. Likewise, it should not be only a rosy picture of their life where they don't feel you have heard their struggles. It should also not be a blow-by-blow of everything the youth did wrong in their eyes, but balance, giving enough information so the reader can understand their challenges, but not so much the youth or whomever feels they are all to blame. It is important to get as full of a picture as possible and not characterize persons or make judgments about motivation for those whose perspectives you don't have. For example, if there is an absent parent, we don't know their perspective and are only hearing one side of the story. They or someone significant to them may end up on the team at some point and would be alienated by being mischaracterized. It is also good to include the perspective of those who interact with the family. In a strength-based way, include what the therapist sees in the youth and family and what they are working toward. Take time to include the coach's perspective of where the youth excels. Include what the teacher has found to be helpful in the classroom or what has been attempted but didn't work and why. Lastly, it should include the family's vision of the life they want or hope to achieve. This can be particularly highlighted because when the team meets, they will discuss how they can work to help join in achieving the family's vision for a better life. Once the narrative and strength summary is completed, it should be shared with the family for their approval. This provides them an opportunity to make edits. Generally, a well-crafted narrative can be a powerful reflection to a family of someone appreciating them and understanding their struggles, but also their gifts and beautiful aspects. Sometimes, additional education is needed about wraparound and strength-based planning, as they want to add some of the blame and judgments they told you back into the document. You can negotiate the facts to include to capture the challenges they face, but in context of some of the unmet needs they have. It may take some explanation or asking their support to trust you understand the process, and that you want to address their needs and challenges as they face, but assigning blame will not be helpful. The facilitator can re-explain the discovery's purpose and that it can be added to as they discover more. The next task is for the facilitator to get the initial meeting scheduled with the right people attending. The facilitator works with the family to find a time and a place that is convenient for them. The first meeting often can be 90 minutes long to allow enough time to cover items so the family and team should be prepared for this. It is also important to get the right people at the table, so sometimes it takes some negotiating, finding the most common time and place where most team members can attend that is convenient for the family. Teams can meet in people's homes, team members' offices, and community rooms at the library. A place wherever there is privacy to hold a meeting and a setting conducive to group discussion. Ideally, there needs to be a place to put up poster paper so the facilitator can capture some ideas visually for the team to look at and refer back to. In contacting the team members, the facilitator needs to convey their importance as a team member and also orient them to what to expect from the meeting, as well as what it may mean for participation in ongoing meetings. Some people are not able to come all of the time, but this would not necessarily prohibit their participation, as long as there is a way to coordinate what they are doing with the team. Let's review another practice level target regarding team development. As seen in the table, the best practice in developing a team involves creating a time and space to listen to each team member before the initial team meeting. This is an opportunity to discuss what wraparound is and to hear from them the strengths and needs they see for the family and how they see their relationship with them. Regarding the family, the facilitator helps them understand the value of having participation of their family, natural supports, and system representatives on the team. The facilitator then crafts an individualized invitation to each team member about the value they would add to the team and how their participation would benefit them. This includes explaining wraparound to them effectively responsive to their role with the family. The facilitator then assists the family in understanding and owning that this is their team and they are driving the planning that will be occurring. The facilitator needs to arrange the logistics of the meeting. This may entail reserving a room or talking with the family about space in their home. The facilitator needs to consider how childcare is addressed for some caregivers to participate. The facilitator needs to plan how to arrange the room to promote discussion and allow for posters to be seen and having enough seating. The facilitator needs to think about the identified youth's participation. Youth voice is important no matter their age. How that is obtained may be adjusted for young children, possibly shortened participation, or someone gathering input from them. But ideally, all youth should participate. As discussed in previous modules, this expectation of youth participation starts from the moment we start explaining the wraparound process to the family. Generally, those 10 or older would be expected to attend regularly. The facilitator should consider supports that will help them participate. Something to draw or write within the meeting, allowing breaks, having a buddy or peer support if available, having them help do some activity in the meeting, such as timekeeping, recording, etc., to keep them participating. The facilitator reviews that they have all needed documents and posters for the meeting. Enough copies of Strengths, Needs, and Culture Discovery, poster with need statements, poster listing of strengths, blank paper or poster to record development of mission statements and ground rules, brainstorming, and action step commitments. In addition to posters, the facilitator needs to have necessary supplies, markers, tape, push pins for corkboard, possibly name tags, sign-in sheet for the meeting. The facilitator should have an agenda for the meeting and a game plan for how much time to spend on items so as to get through them. In the initial meeting module, further explanation and elaboration of the agenda will be covered. Lastly, knowing the culture of the family, the facilitator thinks of ways of incorporating fun in the meeting, which helps engage the team and sets the tone for a positive, celebrative, and strength-based process. Lastly, the facilitator needs to anticipate any situations they may have to deal with regarding the dynamics of the family or team members that they gathered from their various conversations. Sometimes the facilitator can be alerted to conflicts between family members or family and providers that, if known, a strategy can be ready to address should it come up in the initial meeting. This may be headed off by making sure some ground rules are included in the first meeting. It may be the way persons are situated in the room at the meeting, which may help to avoid trouble. It may mean having one-on-one conversations with particular individuals prior to the meeting to explain your role, how their voice will be included, and your plan to manage the touchy situation. The important thing is to be as proactive as possible with the game plan. To recap, compiling the Strengths, Needs, and Culture Discovery, the facilitator begins by reviewing the information gained from meeting the family and organizes it into a narrative so that it will provide the reader or listener the context of where the family has come from, the meaning of events that have occurred in their life, and looks at their life holistically and the various aspects of their lives and family culture. The facilitator looks for those assets, skills, capacities, talents, strong preferences, and ways that things work best for the person and highlights them. These strengths are developed into an initial list, preferably writing them in a way of how they function and have helped the person grow, handle situations, or overcome obstacles. The facilitator then pulls from the family story a robust list of possible needs that, if met, would help address the underlying reasons family members are struggling, and if addressed, help them move to the kind of life they want for themselves. Lastly, the facilitator gets family approval for the Strengths, Needs, and Culture Discovery, organizes the logistics for the initial meeting, and contacts all of the team members to attend. In the next module, we will cover facilitating this first wraparound meeting. Congratulations! You have completed Module 6, Compiling Strengths, Needs, and Culture Discovery and Preparing for the First Team Meeting,